Welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and today's story is it looks as though in the fight for the cultural, in the cultural war, the LGBTQ plus community is trying to, or should I say the radicals. I want to rephrase and preface that because it's not those who are under the LGBTQ plus community or identify as that should not feel attacked and or pressured in any way, shape or form, or made to feel uncomfortable or unwelcomed and or discriminated against. However, there is a more radical and a fringe movement that is trying to, infringe on other individuals' rights to express themselves without being discriminatory against the LGBTQ plus community, but rather trying to force others to accept their reality and insecurities and fears and or accept their trigger points as truth and or reality, which should never be the case. All right. So what we, by the way, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, go ahead and smash on that subscribe button. Your subscriptions go a long way with allowing me to put out and produce new content, as well as beating the YouTube algorithm and getting my videos out there for more distribution. And don't forget to interact on this channel by comment on these videos, like this video, share this video, and if you are subscribed, again, don't forget to check that notification bell. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it looks like Fox News has reported that Wisconsin middle schoolers have been accused of sexual harassment for using the wrong gender pronouns of all things. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article verbatim, but I will put the link in the description box below, but just to cover a little basis of the background. So here it talks about the story of one of the mothers of the sons accused in this sexual harassment, just detailing the phone call she received. So she said she got a phone call from the principal or investigating principal regarding or stating that her son was among one of a couple being now charged with sexual harassment. Now, at first, her mind is, like freaking out. Oh my God, what did my kid do? Because when she thinks of sexual harassment, she says she was thinking of some of the following, like rape, inappropriate touching, like, oh my God, like, what did my kid do? This is horrifying. I didn't raise my son, to do anything of the sort. However, that's not the case. She then goes on to say how the, again, investigating principal charged her kid, among others, with sexual harassment for using the wrong gender pronoun or not using the proper pronoun, which by that point she's like, wait, are you kidding me? Or are you pulling my leg? Because, I'm assuming this mother is around my age group or age range, give or take a few years, which means, like myself, she grew up on Ashton Kutcher's infamous show, Punk'd, which I guess kind of normalized the idea within the younger Gen X and definitely all millennials and now Gen Zs who may have also come across said show and their program to come across gags or pranks that do go to that level, but it wasn't a joke. So here's more or less what she said happened. So apparently, and it wasn't really her son, that there was no bullying involved. She says that her son, Brandon, friend, was being, I guess you can say, verbally attacked by a female student. And she said that a girl, and I'm going to assume it's a girl because she used the gender pronoun she. Apparently she had been screaming at one of her son's friends for not using a proper pronoun, whether it was directed at her specifically or just in general, calling her or using profanity. And this friend, apparently very soft-spoken and, not want to make a fuss or bust a grape in a fruit fight. So her son, kudos to him, said, hey, you're not going to pick on my friend like that. He can't speak for himself, so I'm going to speak up for him. And apparently he finally came up, defended him, and called the other student out, the female student out, saying he doesn't have to use your proper pronouns. It's his constitutional right not to use it if he doesn't want to. You can't make him say things. I don't see anything wrong with that. But again, now it seems like he is being included in this sexual harassment because here's now the stance that the school is taking. Now, this is comment from the school superintendent, Brad Ebert, if I'm pronouncing this name right, and he said, in quote, KASD, which is an acronym for the school district there in Wisconsin, prohibits all forms of bullying and harassment in accordance with all laws, including Title IX, and will continue to support all students regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, ancestry, creed, pregnancy, marital status, parental status, sexual orientation, sex, including transgender status, change of sex or gender identity, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disabilities, end quote, protected classes in any of its student programs and activities. This is consistent with school board policy. We do not comment any further on student matters, end quote. Now, this is what's scary, is that they're taking the defense of this female student who wants to be identified as them, they, as opposed to her biological gender. And they're trying to classify this under Title IX discrimination, which is scary because at one point Title IX used to be for people who look like me at one point, and or Jews, Italians who let's not forget were also persecuted at one point, Native Americans, Japanese, Chinese, Oriental Americans, etc. And now it's including, and rightfully so, those who I also identify as gay, lesbian, transgender. It's one thing to talk about discrimination as legit, but now they're trying to swoop under this umbrella of discrimination and or sexual harassment of all things of gender pronouns. It's not as though these kids were using actual slurs like the N-word, or for the LGBTQ plus community, their version of the F-word. These wasn't a slur. It should be never considered to be a slur to use a gender pronoun or a biological pronoun. And what they're trying to do is, again, and this is what I think those on a more radical side tend to do, is they tend to want to change definitions, change what words mean, like racism, sexism, and now sexual harassment, to include pronouns. Again, pronoun. One of the things that's scary about this, and I always say, you should not judge anyone, should not be discriminatory, bigoted towards anyone, and or leave anyone out, should not harass anyone, but you don't also have to accept another person's reality, or it shouldn't be forced upon you if it's not in line with your way of thinking, beliefs, and or the facts. In this case, student who was clearly born a female, apparently, just because she doesn't want to be identified as such, doesn't mean that other people should be forced to accept that in their own reality and or normal conversation, especially if he wasn't addressing her specifically. But again, if they're able to swoop this under Title IX, it's not even just a matter of winning the cultural war. If they can get this to be considered the new norm, they're going to change the way the next generation is allowed to speak and or will be speaking from this point forward, and their ability to use the law in their favor. Now, has this passed Title IX? I wonder. Now, here's what those should do. Now, this is a letter from the law firm representing the students, the boys involved here. But more specifically, I wanted to point out the email address of said superintendent, as well as counselor and Title IX compliance officer and or principal and Title IX investigator in here. In this case, Chad Ramiger, who is the principal and Title IX investigators mentioned in the article, as well as Megan Kautzer, if I'm pronouncing her name right. Get these 3 emails and flood their emails with your thoughts and beliefs, because if a small minority of less than maybe 1% is able to make noise and make major changes, and or companies, corporations, and or in this case school districts bend to their will, like with the case of Disney World and the handful of employees that were against the Ron DeSantis bill. I hate to say his because it did pass the Florida state legislature. He just signed it and supported the parental educational right, misproperly referred to as a Don't Say Gay bill. Were able to make noise at Walt Disney World and get Disney to take a stand that definitely bit them in the rear as a result. And just a handful, just imagine what a flood of emails showing support for the students, the ridiculousness of this investigation can do if the other 99% of the population come forward and speak out and say, no, we will not accept this. Because if you don't fight for it now, you will cry for how far and how bad things have gotten a couple of years from now. So definitely record these email addresses. Ebert at Keel, if I'm pronouncing that right, .k12.wi.us for the superintendent, etc. But they do mention some interesting things in their letter to the superintendent, the counselor, and Title IX compliance officer, as well as the Title IX investigator and principal in this particular case. A couple of things they mention here. One is that the complaint against the boys and the district's ongoing investigation are not only inappropriate and does not constitute sexual harassment, but they're saying that they're not even following the actual procedures and the policy of this district and Title IX, and therefore it should be removed. But more importantly, they start to talk about what is sexual harassment under Title IX. They're saying, in this case, proper pronouns or the lacking use of proper pronouns does not fall under Title IX sexual harassment. That it typically covers things like rape, sexual assault, dating violence, stalking, inappropriate touching, and quid pro quo sexual favors. None of that or anything even close is alleged here. While there is a catch-all for unwelcome conduct that is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person equal access to education. See Davis v. Monroe County Board of Education. So we have legal proceedings here. You cannot make the argument that using a pronoun of she or her reaches that level of severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive, because it really is not objective. Most people in this country or throughout the world do not see pronouns as being objectively offensive in the least. In fact, that was the norm not too long ago. And I'm not talking about norms like segregation was once a norm. We're just talking about just normal mores, even post-awakening and the woke period. But once more, they're saying that mispronouncing is not even under Title IX to begin with, at least not yet. They're stating that gender identity is not included within the definition of sex within Title IX. In fact, the Department of Education is currently attempting to amend Title IX to add it, which means, when I tried to do my research, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, share links, but the only thing I was able to find as it relates to pronouncing and transgender students is this Washington Post article dated not that long ago, actually, March 30th, 2022. So we're talking about barely 6 weeks ago, in which case in this article, which I'll put the link in the description box below with everything else, all of the other links, they are talking about adding it to the Title IX, but there's been no official changes to Title IX to actually include this officially. Otherwise, if that was true, then after the whole, what's the transgender swimmer from the University of Pennsylvania's name? I think Leah Thompson, if I'm not mistaken. Once she came to the national spotlight or stage, several states started passing laws to make sure or ensure that biological males and females don't interact in the same sporting activities and or competition, i.e. even if you are considered transgender and or starts to go through sex hormone changes and or gender change, gender reassignment, or gender affirmation surgery, whatever you want to call it. If you were born biologically male, you cannot compete with biological or biologically born females, and vice versa. If this rule had passed, those state laws would be null and void and or violation of Title IX, which hasn't happened yet. Which again just goes to tell me that while the Board of Education is trying to introduce this under Title IX, it actually hasn't passed yet, which means it's not a Title IX violation yet, even though that's what they would like to make a reality. But you can also push against that as well, make your voice known and are heard in the fight for, I guess, culture and or definition in term. Because again, just because one person is triggered by something as asinine as a pronoun, based upon the gender that they were not only born with, by all indications, especially as a middle schooler, it would be illegal for her to undergo any actual surgery. So she still has female genitalia. And I don't care who knows this, but I mean, truth be told, there really are only two genders, male, female, or sexes, male, again, and female. Men, women, boys, girls. Now, if you I'm all for going beyond labels or not allowing labels to define you. Although clearly a lot of these individuals are actually accepting labels. They're just accepting a new label for themselves. But you should not in any way be forced to accept that accept someone else to accept your reality. Do your best to express yourself. Be true to who you are. I like David Goggins, although I won't use his language, but you really should not give 2 cents about other people's opinions. Otherwise, you will go crazy mentally, psychologically. Know who you are, be confident in who you are, however you choose to express yourself, but never be so arrogant as to expect other individuals to accept your reality, your terms, your trigger warnings. Again, this is not using individuals using slurs and expecting that person being harassed with or bombarded with actual slurs to put up with it. This is just simple pronouns. And it's just crazy that we've gotten to the point where we're accepting kids or accepting individuals to be not only triggered by something so small, but then punishing others for not adhering to that ideology way of thinking. So hopefully the boys win this case. Definitely, I say, again, make your voice known. It's very scary to see what's happening in the school district. Another reason why you should start really pulling either pull your kids out of the public school sector, and or if you can, just make sure you are there for every school board meeting, parent-teacher conference, and aware of what's being taught, what's being discussed, what rule changes there are, and speaking up. And also, I'd say keep recording these battles, because I'm pretty certain the school board does not want people to know what's actually going on in these meetings, rule changes. And it's also frightening to see the White House and their government, or should I say the feds, FBI, start to try to treat concerned parents as actual terrorists for just standing up for their rights, their cultures, and what their kids are being bombarded with. When we talk about terms like groomers, we're not just really referring to, or not even really always referring to at all, sexual exploitation, harassment, and or misconduct with minors, but rather trying to groom individuals walk them down a certain path, groom them to become what you want them to be. This goes to a video I posted that I think you should go check out. A former KGB member talked about moral demoralization of a culture, and how the KGB have actually already infiltrated American culture through the education system, teaching a certain new accepted ideology, way of thinking, in order to bring down said society, demoralize it, so that they can not only, Russia, then Soviet Union can come out victorious, but you can try to destroy the country from within, get them believing certain concepts, mores, or rules that will eventually lead to that nation's decay or downfall. And that interview was done in the 1980s, so almost 40 years ago, and he said that they had already infiltrated the American educational system, and we can see the results possibly of it when you look at millennials who then came through said educational system thereafter, starting to accept more extreme, if not outright blatantly saying, Marxist policies and or manifestos. And he said that this was a process that can take tens, maybe 20 years, decades in the process, but well worth it, because once you get a generation through the educational system, you've got them in their formative years. So you definitely have to push back with what's going on and fight. So that's the video here. That's all I had to say. Let me know what you think in the comment section regarding this exchange over this fight here. I will definitely try to keep up with this because, again, it's just getting insane to how far they're really pushing the pendulum. And if they can actually get this under Title IX, so you have to stay on top of that, it could be really an uphill battle. But it would be, I think, a First Amendment violation if something like this does start to be enforced and or fought against, because no government should force you to say anything. And I like how the lawyers actually went on to say at one point, here we go, that even the courts have made clear that high standard does not cover commonplace schoolyard altercations such as name calling, teasing, or minor physical scuffles, even where these comments target differences in gender. See Doe versus Goldster. So we have court precedents on this issue. Not that any of the above mentioned is all right in any case of the word, but simply using a pronoun that some other student does not want to accept anymore should not be considered now commonplace sexual harassment. And again, if you don't make a stand now, they'll really keep pushing the envelope to the point where everything becomes offensive, everything becomes harassment, and you have to adhere to their way of thinking. And it'll be really scary to see where this world, this country in particular, could find itself being in another 20 or 30 years if it doesn't collapse under the weight of the failed policy of the Biden administration and or growing inflation and national debt, which is a topic for another day. But that's my video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like this video, comment on this video, and subscribe to the channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and I'm out. Peace.